Coming up on Talking Points, crisis averted on Capitol Hill. No government shutdown for now. But will the deal struck shut down McCarthy's speakership?
And Congress enters a mourning period following the death of California Senator Dianne Feinstein. We discuss her legacy on Capitol Hill.
Plus, a recap of the second GOP presidential primary debate. The biggest talking point will not shock you. This and more, Talking Point starts right now. Good evening and welcome into Talking Points. I'm Jake Morel.
And I'm Olivia Maniscalco. Let's start things off tonight with some news from Washington.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy worked with Democrats to narrowly avoid a government shutdown on Saturday night. In the final hours, President Biden signed a 45-day deal to keep the lights on. Joining us now at the desk is Talking Points analyst Luke Radel. Luke, what happens next?
Jake and Olivia, all roads lead back to one man, Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz. Last week was a really bad week for Gaetz, and it all started with this.
I never dated Matt Gaetz. I have much higher standards in men, and Matt, frankly, is a very unserious politician. We see that today with the ruckus that he is causing on Capitol Hill with the spending negotiations.
That's former Trump White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson discussing, among other things, the congressman's tactics in the ongoing spending negotiations. All last week, Gaetz threatened that he'd kick McCarthy out of the speaker's chair if he didn't cave to all of Gaetz's demands. But McCarthy knew that even if Gaetz's uber-conservative spending priorities passed the House, they'd never survive in the Democratic Senate and White House. So eventually, McCarthy said basically the same thing as Cassidy Hutchinson, that having a relationship with Matt Gaetz is just not a good idea. Here's McCarthy.
Unfortunately, a handful of people, and in particular a party of one, Matt Gaetz, have chosen to put his own agenda, his own personal agenda, above all else. He's not a conservative Republican, he's a charlatan.
And guys, that's freshman Republican Congressman Mike Lawler out of New York. Just minutes ago, Matt Gaetz did what was expected. He filed a motion to vacate McCarthy from the Speaker's chair, which will force a majority vote on keeping McCarthy as Speaker in the next few days. And as Punchbowl News laid out early this morning, McCarthy very well could be a former Speaker by the end of this week. And anyone who tells you definitively that they know what's going to happen next is delusional or isn't being honest. Olivia and Jake.
Luke, you know, this is making a lot of folks on Capitol Hill mad, including members of Gaetz's own party. What happens next for him?
Yeah, we just heard there from Congressman Mike Lawler out of New York. Folks are very upset on both sides of the aisle with Matt Gaetz right now for not prioritizing what they believe should be conservative government. There was initially a bill that was introduced by McCarthy on the House floor that Gaetz voted against that would have had more spending cuts than the 45-day deal that ultimately passed. The sentiment from both Democrats and Republicans tonight is that Matt Gaetz is not trying to be a congressman, he's trying to be a cable news pundit.
And this truly is a threat to McCarthy's speakership. Will Democrats save the speakership?
Yeah, in order for McCarthy to get out of this motion to vacate, he would need some Democratic votes because Matt Gaetz has been able to get up about 20 to 30 people that would vote to oust him. The decision on whether they save McCarthy comes down to House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who would have to decide to work and save McCarthy's speakership. But there are lots of folks like progressive Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who simply say that they shouldn't save McCarthy because he'd be just as bad as any other Republican speaker that could come in his place.
Thank you, Luke. In terms of the government shutdown, there was a clear winner: Republicans who don't like the U.S. giving Ukraine money. The short-term funding bill was absent of $6 billion in Ukraine aid.
This comes a week after Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky visited Capitol Hill to appeal to lawmakers, warning that Ukraine would lose the war without continued support. Over the past couple of months, Americans have become more resistant to sending aid. Most of them now say that the Biden administration should be doing less to help Ukraine. So, Olivia, let's take a look at that poll right now. See that doing less has grown much larger in recent weeks. And, you know, this conflict has been going on for over a year, or Over a year now, yes.
Yeah.
Far over a year, about a year and a half now. And we've seen public opinion in the United States shift massively. And it's so interesting to watch things like that GOP debate on Wednesday and see how big of a talking point this has become for everyone.
Yeah, it was pretty much split on who was in support of continuing to give all this aid and who wanted less. I mean, we had Trump and DeSantis and Ramaswamy. Of course, Trump was not the debate, but they think that we should not be giving this much aid. Nikki Haley, Chris Christie, they're fine with the aid right now. I mean, pretty much all of the government is split on both sides. So it is just really interesting, and it is really no one knows where the line should be drawn.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see those other candidates talk about it and to see Christie and Haley talk about supporting it to contain Putin and see how the disdain for Putin, but also the disdain for spending on foreign countries kind of mixes and see where people draw that line. But if you take a look at this poll as well about sending weapons to Ukraine, specifically among Republicans, you see that big jump, a 10% drop off from just February to now. And again, like I said, it's interesting to see some of them split to say, we need to stop Putin. We need to push as much as we can up against him. And some of them splitting to say, it's not our conflict. We don't need to be spending money on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is definitely, as the days goes on, more and more people think that a line should be drawn. But really, it doesn't seem like an end in this aid is in sight, except for some of it that was cut with the last spending bill.
Absolutely, Olivia. Something we will have to keep an eye on. House Republicans are continuing their calls to knock Democratic Congressman Jamal Bowman for pulling a fire alarm on Capitol Hill on Saturday. The incident took place right before the House was set to vote on the government funding bill. Speaker McCarthy went on the offensive this morning against Bowman, saying his actions were childish.
Bowman admitted to pulling the fire alarm in a Saturday afternoon press release. He said he was embarrassed by his actions and activating the fire alarm was an accident. The incident is currently being investigated by Capitol Hill police, and it's unclear if Bowman will be charged for the incident.
And coming up on Talking Points, Senator Dianne Feinstein passed away at 90 years old. Her legacy and her successor, coming up.
Precise, no margin for error.
Dare to forget that. Dare to have fun with it. Get weird with it. Dare to send those old STEM theories flying past the neighbor's house into outer space. Dare to program something internet-breaking, record-breaking. Dare to blow their minds. Dare to learn the difference between sedimentary and metamorphic rock. Go find those rocks. Dare to keep daring. Dare to STEM. Check out She Can STEM to get started.
Welcome back to Talking Points. California Senator Dianne Feinstein, the longest-serving female U.S. senator, died late last week. Talking Points analyst Ronnie Perillo joins us now with more on her life and legacy.
A trailblazer. That's the word many are using to describe Senator Dianne Feinstein. The California lawmaker passed away peacefully in Washington, D.C. last week, casting her last vote on the Senate floor just one day before her death early Friday morning. Feinstein served as California's senior senator, first making her journey to D.C. in 1992. She formerly served as San Francisco's mayor through much of the 1980s and sat on the city's Board of Supervisors. While in San Francisco, she oversaw a renovation of the city's famed cable car system. Feinstein launched an unsuccessful bid for governor of California in 1990, but beat out Democrat Senator John Seymour in a 1992 special election, sending her to Washington, D.C. Feinstein was the longest-serving woman in the Senate. She's being remembered by her colleagues and from people on both sides of the aisle as a woman who left her mark. Feinstein was instrumental in passing the assault weapons ban of 1994 and standing up for LGBTQ rights. During the Trump administration, the senator began to drift farther to the left, but she did work with conservatives and more centrist Democrats during her time on the Hill. Now, Democrats and Republicans alike are remembering her as a leader and an advocate. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell taking time on the Senate floor, calling her a dear friend and a role model. Now, the senator announced earlier this year that she would not run for re-election. This as concerns began to grow among Senate members and her constituents about her health condition. Jake?
Ronnie Perillo, thank you. Let's bring in Talking Points anchor Chilakase Adeli. Chile, you've been monitoring this story. Newsom is set to appoint Emily's List President LaFonza Butler as California's next senator. Tell us, who is she?
Well, Jake, this is somebody with not a huge amount of political experience, meaning public office. But why don't we take a little bit of a look at her rap sheet and what she's done till now. Known as a Democratic strategist, very prominent in the labor movement. You mentioned she is the president, most recently was the president of Emily's List. That's a national political organization that focuses on electing pro-abortion access Democrats. Also, you don't see it on your screen, she was a senior strategist on now Vice President Kamala Harris's 2020 presidential campaign, mentioned some of the labor movements as well, previously served as president of the California SEIU State Council and later SEIU Local 2015 in California, worked with former Governor Jerry Brown to increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour in that state. She also served on the University of California Board of Regents and will be the first openly LGBTQ person to rep the California Senate. But it's also interesting to note how connected she is to Newsom as well, a one-time partner in a consulting firm with Newsom's top political advisors.
And speaking of Newsom, Chile, is he upholding what he planned to do when asked about it?
Yeah, so Jake, this is something that's been talked about for a long time. Newsom would get asked this question all the time. Are you going to appoint a black woman into the Senate if, Feinstein were to retire or unfortunately pass away? Let's take a look at what he said in 2021 on MSNBC, something he later affirmed on Meet the Press.
If, in fact, Dianne Feinstein were to retire, will you nominate an African-American woman to restore the seat that Kamala Harris is no longer in the United States Senate? And do you have a name in mind?
We have multiple names in mind, and the answer is yes.
What you're going to abide by, it would be essentially a caretaker, an African-American woman.
We hope we never have to make this decision, but I abide by what I've said very publicly on a consistent basis, yes.
So you see that answer, right? This is somebody who committed previously to appointing a black woman back in 2021. That's something he affirmed. Now, it's interesting. Over the course of the weekend, there has been pressure, and Barbara Lee, representative from Oakland, there was pressure to appoint her. The Congressional Black Caucus wrote a letter to Newsom voicing strong support for Lee being appointed. This is a hard position to fill, though. There was a lot of people who were considered on the short list who publicly didn't want to, because let's not forget, and I'll get into it a little bit later, this is going to be a very confusing race with a lot of races coming up in the California Senate.
Chile looks like Newsom keeping his promise, but lots of people were vying to replace Senator Feinstein anyway. We talked about Barbara Lee and others. How did all that competition factor into Newsom's final choice?
So this is really interesting, right? There's some reporting from Politico, if I want to put on the screen a little bit, which broke this story about the replacement. An advisor to the governor said that Newsom is making the appointment without limitations or preconditions on 2024. So Butler could also decide to run for the seat. Now, it's interesting. Before this weekend, Newsom didn't really want to put someone in there that's already vying for Feinstein's seat next year. That's also something he touched on in that Meet the Press interview last month. Remember, this is his second appointment as governor. Alex Padilla appointed for former Senator, now Vice President Kamala Harris. And it's interesting, in that Meet the Press interview, he talked about not wanting to tip the scales, meaning he doesn't want to give somebody an incumbent advantage. If he appointed Barbara Lee, that would have been interesting because he most likely would have done that. But in this California Senate race, the three-headed monster really going for this spot right now, you have Barbara Lee. You also have Representatives Adam Schiff and Katie Porter. And Schiff and Porter are actually leading that race right now in the polls, not Barbara Lee. So again, wanting to kind of stay out of it there. Now, let's not forget, as you can see on your screen, this is going to be a very confusing race for a lot of Californians. There's a special election to fill Feinstein's seat until January 3rd, 2025. That is on the same day as the general election to fill the seat for a full term that would begin in 2025, not to mention the primary. So in this race, you've got voters voting for the same seat 2 times on the same day. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Thank you, Chile. Moving on to the averted government shutdown. Now that it has been temporarily averted in Washington, impeachment talks continue on the Hill. Business is back to normal, and that means some conservatives are refocusing on impeaching President Biden. Talking Points analyst Luke Welch recaps the first Biden impeachment inquiry hearing.
Thursday in Congress was set to be a busy day. With no spending bills passed, the looming government shutdown was just 2 days away. However, Speaker Kevin McCarthy and a group of conservatives chose to spend the day inquiring impeachment into President Biden on claims that his influence led his son Hunter to conduct illegal business schemes. While the impeachment investigation drew some GOP support, many moderate Republicans and Democrats, as well as progressives such as Texas Representative Jasmine Crockett, emphasized this was a waste of time due to lack of evidence and emphasized how it should be Trump in the hot seat instead.
As I prepared, I said, what is the crime? Because when you're talking about impeachment, you're talking about high crimes or misdemeanors. And I can't seem to find the crime. And honestly, no one has testified of what crime they believe the president of the United States has committed. But when we start talking about things that look like evidence, they want to act like they blind. They don't know what this is. These are our national secrets. Looks like in the shit to me.
And to make matters worse, the expert witnesses chosen by the Republican Party seemed easily squandered when addressed by fellow progressive AOC.
I have a simple question for you. In your testimony today, are you presenting any firsthand witness account of crimes committed by the President of the United States?
No, I'm not.
I have not.
I have not.
2 individuals presented today who do have firsthand accounts surrounding the progeny of these allegations are being blocked from testifying by the Republican majority.
Now, no new hearing is scheduled yet, but Republicans are hoping that their next witness is Tony Bobulinski, a former business associate of the president's son, while Democrats are hoping to see who they claim is the actual evidence holder, former Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani. Olivia?
Thank you, Lou. Coming up after the break, a report from New York City where President Trump is being sued for business fraud. Stick with us.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move, so I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Last week, we saw 7 GOP hopefuls participate in the second presidential primary debate. The candidates argued about social issues and public policy, but the headline is still the absence of the frontrunner, former President Trump. This is on the minds of American viewers at home. And the candidates did not shy away from attacking Trump Wednesday night at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library in California. Peter Berry joins us now. Peter, how did the candidates respond to Trump's absence?
Well, good evening, Jake. the candidates did not shy away from taking shots at President Trump for his absence on the stage. One notable critic throughout the second debate was former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. He even referred to former president as Donald Duck for ducking the debate. Even Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who is far away second from Trump, said, quote, "He owes it to you to defend his record, where they added $7.8 trillion to the debt," end quote. Although Trump was mentioned a lot, he was not the main focus of the debate. The 7 candidates argued about foreign policy, government policies, and social issues. The biggest topic among the candidates was closing the southern border, which many of them agreed upon. Then there were moments where the candidates sparred on some topics. We saw former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley going on the offensive against Vivek Ramaswamy when one question was directed towards him about TikTok. She seemed frustrated with Vivek throughout the night. Let's take a look here.
TikTok is one of the most dangerous social media apps that we could have. And what you've got, I honestly, every time I hear you, I feel a little bit dumber for what you say.
After this debate, Trump still has a commanding lead in the national, Iowa, and New Hampshire polls. The candidates will debate again 5 weeks from now on November 8th in Miami. Jake, back to you at the desk.
Talking Points, we'll have more on the primary later in the show. Peter Berry, thank you.
Donald Trump was back in court today, but not for one of his pending criminal trials. Today is the first day of Trump's civil trial, where he's being sued by New York State Attorney General Letitia James for business fraud. Our Jacob Goldberg is in New York City, where the trial is underway. He has the latest from today.
Earlier today, former President Donald Trump appeared in this courthouse right behind me for the start of a civil lawsuit claiming him and members of his family lied on financial forms for nearly a decade. This comes as Attorney General Letitia James released a 220-page report claiming that these finances were, quote, grossly exaggerated. If these claims are found out to be true, it would mean that for the past 10 years, Trump and members of his family were able to get more favorable loans and tax breaks. According to Manhattan Supreme Court filings, Trump was reaping hundreds of millions of dollars in ill-gotten savings and profits. While the case is merely a civil trial and cannot bring legal trouble for Trump, the fines could be as high as $250 million if the claims are found to be true. In recent weeks, Trump has taken to his social media platform, Truth Social, to display his displeasure with the situation. Just a few days ago, he attacked the judge appointed to this case. He said, quote, "I have a deranged, Trump-hating judge who railroaded this fake case through a New York State court at a speed never before seen." Letitia James has also taken time to throw punches at Trump, saying in a press conference that, quote, "Claiming you have money you do not does not amount to the art of the deal. It is the art of the steal." All this back and forth between the Attorney General and the former president has created an interesting case that will likely continue for the coming days. Reporting from Lower Manhattan, Jacob Goldberg, Citrus TV News.
Jacob Goldberg, thank you for that report. We should note that Trump went on the record this afternoon regarding the trial. During the lunch break, Trump told reporters the judge in this case should be disbarred. He said, quote, "Let's go to trial because this is a judge that should be disbarred. This is a judge that should be out of office. This is a judge that some people say should be charged criminally for what he's doing," end quote. Trump said he wanted to attend the first day of the trial in person to see the, quote, "witch hunt myself." Now let's go across to the coast to California, where minimum wage is set to increase to $20 for fast food workers. But is that too high compared to other state-level minimum wages? Talking Points analyst Harrison Calder has the numbers for us. Harrison, does California now have the highest minimum wage across the entire nation?
Good evening, Olivia. Yes, they do. So it's going to be $20 now for fast food when it comes to California, and there's a lot of people there. 550,000 fast food workers, 30,000 statewide stores. And when you look at who these people are, you have 80% of them minorities, 67% female. This will be put into effect in 2024, so just a few months away. But this is very different than overall minimum wage. This is only for fast food. The overall minimum wage is at $15.50, and when you take a look here, employers with 25 or less employees, that started in 2017 at $10, has risen all the way up to $15.50, and employees with 26 or more employees, that was at $10.50 and has slowly been above it until this year when it went down to $15.50 as well. And then when you compare it to other states, We'll take a look. Georgia here, $5.15, the lowest in the United States, an incredibly low amount. Then $7.25 for Pennsylvania, which is the typical minimum wage minimum. And then you take a look at Ohio towards the middle, that's going to be at $10.10. And then you get to some of the bigger dogs with New York at $14.20. Then, of course, if you go to New York City or other areas in the state of New York, it's going to be $15. And then California, the most at $15.50. So why is California the most? You look at Gavin Newsom. He's been very in favor of minimum wage and how minimum wage impacts a lot of people. He was quoted saying that today we take one step closer to fairer wages, safer and healthier working conditions, and better training by giving hardworking fast food workers a stronger voice and a seat at the table. So this has been a very big issue for Gavin Newsom, and this bill will be taking place in 2024. Olivia, back to you at the desk.
Thank you, Harrison. With Trump absent at Wednesday's debate, all eyes are on him. Did his strategy to skip the debate help his polling numbers? Find out after the break.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Talking Points. Before we end our show tonight, let's take a peek at where the 2024 polls stand today. Starting things off with the GOP primary poll. You can see the elephant in the room, still up there at 53%. Donald Trump extending his lead on the rest of the field. I remember just about a year ago, and then again about 6 months ago, when people were talking about Ron DeSantis like he was really going to go win this thing. And it seemed like the conservative base was excited about DeSantis. You had a lot of Fox News pundits saying DeSantis was what's next. You had the New York Post calling him the future. But now you've got Trump calling him DeSanctimonious and also destroying him without even showing up to debate. Olivia, your thoughts?
And it's interesting because at the first Republican primary debate, none of the candidates really attacked Trump much. They kind of tried to stay off the fact that he wasn't there. The second one, it was a big topic at the debate. It's clear that they want their bases to know that they want to tell them that Trump's acting like it's because he's scared, whatever it may be, the reason that he's not there. But they're definitely trying to push the fact that it is not a good thing that Trump wasn't at the debate. Moving on to Trump versus Biden, though, their polling numbers, you can see the current president, Joe Biden, is defeating the former in the polls, but not by a lot. What do you think about those numbers, Jake?
This is interesting. This is an Economist poll from last week. We saw a Fox News poll a few weeks ago that had Trump beating Biden. I saw a lot about it on Truth Social from Trump. But it's interesting how we still see Trump hanging around, right? And we've seen all of these federal indictments. He has 91 criminal charges against him right now. He was in court today, and it wasn't even for any of those criminal charges. He's in court for a civil case. There's cameras on him in court, and he's still polling at 40%. I think it just shows how strong of a candidate he still is and how he could still win the presidency in 2024, albeit that he's not in jail.
Yeah, it's interesting also, the actual debate did not get very much viewership. Actually, 2 in 3 Republicans did not watch the debate at all. 14% watched the entire thing, some watched clips. it's almost like people don't really care that much about the other candidates. They're just looking at former President Trump, and obviously for the Democrats, it's just Biden as well. So it is going to be interesting to see how this plays out.
Absolutely, Olivia. Some even calling that debate a VP contest. That's all the time we have for you on this episode of Talking Points. Be sure to follow us on social media at CitrusTV News. I'm Jake Morel.
And I'm Olivia Maniscalco. Have a great night, Syracuse.